more interested in is like what we're doing in regards to like short sales and HAFA. But there is a process that we do go through, so I kind of wanted to explain to you, and like I said, give you the overview of what we do and the process. And then afterwards, we can have like a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any question that I can. So we'll get down to it. So basically, back in 2009, when the HAMP rolled out, the Making Home Affordable program rolled out to assist borrowers, in making their payments more affordable, Chase opened up 24 home ownership centers, basically in the top 25 MSAs or markets in the country. Since then, we've opened up another 26, and through the middle of 2011, we're going to have a total of 81 of these centers. And the whole point of these centers is basically to give a borrower face-to-face interaction with somebody at the bank. Because we all know that you go through the 800 numbers, and we have literally over 30,000 people that work in our default and servicing division. So you want to give, or Chase wanted to give our borrowers a one-on-one, one point of contact, and that's the whole point of the centers. In Northern California, we have 5 centers. And just to kind of take a show of hands, has anybody worked with any of the centers or had borrowers? Okay, well hopefully they had a good experience, because that's the whole point of the centers. So each one of these centers is staffed with homeownership advisors, and their sole purpose is to deal with customers that come in and have questions, and to give them options on what's available to them. Because the conversations that we have, they're not always hunky-dory and what the borrower wants to hear. It's basically to inform them, because quite frankly, not everyone can qualify for a loan modification, as I'm sure you've all have heard, and all of the press and media stuff that's been centered around the loan modification. It's a work in progress, and we are absolutely committed to streamlining that process, and basically the main goal is to keep the borrower in the home, and if we can't keep them in the home, to give them their next best options. So as I was saying, in Northern California, we do have 5 centers, one in Sacramento, Walnut Creek, Oakland, Santa Clara, and Stockton. We're soon to be adding one in Fresno. So when I do get everyone's business cards, I will send you the information about each center and contact numbers. So if you have any borrowers, Chase borrowers that were either Chase, Washington Mutual, or EMC customers, which are basically on their Chase now, we'll be more than you can refer them to the center. Or if you yourself have any questions about the loan modification process, you can call, and we'll be more than happy to assist you or your borrowers or clients with any questions they may have. So in regards to, let's see here. So first of all, when a borrower comes into one of our centers, they make an appointment with our receptionist or whoever answers the phone, and basically we discuss with them, we tell them the paperwork that they need, and basically it all centers around their income documentation. So whatever type of income that they have, whether they be self-employed, a wage earner, unemployed, on a fixed income, you name it, there are programs for people for each income type. So when they come in, they bring in their paperwork with the application and all their income paperwork, and basically our advisors go over with them the process. They gather all the paperwork that's needed, and then in our centers we have our own underwriters that underwrite the files to review. And so when a file goes in for review, we review them for basically 1 of 5 options at the time that it goes into underwriting. Basically the first one, and we call this the waterfall, we review people for so if a person is just behind on their mortgage and we see that they can actually afford their mortgage but they're behind, we look at what we call a repayment plan. And all the repayment plan is basically whatever their arrearage is on the loan, it's to bring the person current and basically to drive them, to bring in them current. And typically most repayment plans are like for 6 months. The second one is a forbearance plan. Like, so say for instance, we have a borrower that comes in and they're unemployed right now, or they're a self-employed borrower, and say, we all know if somebody walks into my office and they're self-employed, we all know what's going on in the economy, whether it be like construction or whatever it may be. The forbearance plan is designed to, all it is a short-term contract between payment plan between the borrower and the bank. In some instances, we may not require the borrower to make any payment for like 3 months. And it basically keeps them on track to maybe like 3 months after that, we review them for another forbearance plan. And I can answer any questions around that. That's the second one. The third one, obviously, is the loan mod. And the loan mod is designed basically to bring the borrower's payments in line with what they were making before. So the qualifying ratio for most loan mods is, if you're familiar with the HAMP, is 31%. We're trying to bring the borrower's home expense ratio, so it's whether it's PITI, down to a 31% ratio on the front end. And that's the main, so if anyone knows anything about HAMP or the Making Home Affordable, that's the main guideline for that, because obviously most people's income has been reduced or gone. And the goal of that is to bring the person's payment in line with what they were making when they pretty much bought the house. So, the next one is a deed in lieu. We don't see too many of those. And all that is basically the person deeding the house back to the bank. So on your credit reports, it's treated as a foreclosure. But the difference is the cure date is the date that the house is turned over, rather than the date that when the house is actually sold at REO. And the fifth one is short sale. That's actually the next best option after if like say a loan modification isn't in the cards for the borrower. We always, our talk off is the short sale. So, I know right now that's pretty prevalent for everyone in this room. So I will discuss in detail, and again, if you guys have any questions, we could talk about that. And the last one obviously is foreclosure. The banks, we do everything that we can to keep the borrowers out of foreclosure for lots of different reasons. In particular, when a house goes to foreclosure, that could be a difference of anywhere from what we're seeing to anywhere from 10 to 20% as opposed to an REO sale, which drives housing prices even lower. We lose more money, and so the whole gist of it is to do the talk-offs. At least on our side, we do everything we can to drive the borrower to the short sale, and I'll go over that process later. But so back to the loan mod. When we are qualifying people for a loan mod, there's two basic programs that we look at, and one is HAMP. It's the Home Affordable Modification Program, which or the Obama plan, and we review people for that first. If they don't qualify for that, there are what we call in-house mods, or at Chase we call it a CHAMP, basically the Chase Home Affordable Modification Program. And so those are the two programs that we look at as on top of that waterfall. So when you're looking at the loan mod, that's what we look at. Let's see here. Does anyone have any questions? I guess I can just kind of go into that for now. If anyone has any questions about modification, the modification part of the program. No. Okay. So I'll go into short sale. So when a house, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
What if you have a second with Chase on your mortgage?
Okay, so good question. So if you have a second with Chase, we're gonna review the first first, because honestly, there's really no reason for us to modify a second if you can't afford your first. So the process is basically you get reviewed for your first, and if you qualify for that, then we submit you for a second modification
What
on
if
your
your first
second.
isn't with Chase?
Well, so if your second isn't with, if your first isn't with Chase, we ask that you apply for the loan mod with whoever your first lien holder is, and once you get that decision back, then we can review for the loan mod on the second.
What if you don't want the loan mod on your first, you just want it on the second?
Well, I can honestly say that it may not look good in regards to what you may be offered, but it's not to say that we wouldn't. But as a general rule of thumb, we need to see that the first, because obviously if you can't afford your second, I mean, there's something wrong with your first. So,
Well,
affordability wise.
I have an interest only on my second, and, should I turn that into, a regular loan, where you're paying on principal rather than just the interest?
Oh, yes, yes. The whole gist of any modification program is basically to take someone like, so say you're on an interest only, to get you into more fixed, principal and interest type payment. So.
And then I wouldn't need to modify my first, I just want to modify the second.
So.
I just loan it.
Okay, so these are great questions, and I mean, so I'm just gonna ask you, is it with Chase or is it with another lender?
The first is with Wells Fargo and the second is with Chase.
Okay, so we can go over it. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. I mean, we can get into the specifics, but I just kind of gave you the general guide on what we do.
Okay.
But see, that's a situation where you can come in and talk to advisor. I mean, we can submit your paperwork and see what happens. But, and again, in these centers, we don't make the decisions there. We advise, and we honestly do try to seek the best option. So if it's within guideline, I would say it would work. We'll try to make it work.
What's the turn time on a modification?
So that's a great question. So I'll give you the general right now. So if you come into the center, we do have our own underwriters. Our turn times right now are 60 to 90 days. Mainly, I think my average one's probably going around 45 to 60, but when I'm talking to anybody, I mean, we always, I believe in the under promise and over deliver things. So, I'm gonna say 60 to 90. And we've heard the horror stories, I'll be honest. The process, like I said, this thing has been a work in progress, and the scope of it is beyond anything that any lender, it's beyond our wildest dreams. So to actually design, a loan modification program that works for everybody, it's still in the works.
So I got a question then, because I have, my brother-in-law is trying to do a modification, and he just went to the bank and they gave him some paperwork to fill out and send it in. And I just had this feeling that this is probably gonna go nowhere fast. Would they be better off to go to one of the centers?
Absolutely. And like the whole point of the center. Well, the question was if they had her brother-in-law had submitted their paperwork and has been working through the 800 numbers, and she was asking if it was beneficial, if they would, since the paperwork was already in process, if it would be beneficial for them to come into the center. And so, on that point, anyone that has a work a loan mod in process, if it's where we look at it and we see that if it's where it needs to be, we'll communicate to whatever line of business is underwriting it for the loan mod. And if there's any, because what's famous is like people are probably one of our biggest complaints is I turn this paperwork in and then you guys say you didn't get it, right? So the whole point of the centers is like when you give us paperwork, we upload it into the system and we document it. And
So if they're in Pinole, which they go to Oakland?
they can go to Oakland, Walnut Creek. So when I send you that information, they can go to any office they prefer, but
Okay,
Oakland is the closest, and I can recommend certain people there that,
great.
ma'am.
Thank you.
My experience with loan mods has been, particularly in helping people try to get their loan modifications through, is that, first of all, you've got all the emotionalism, and then you have the discouragement of people who believe from the offset that it's not gonna do any good. And then the negotiator is frequently using language that the borrower does not understand. And so things are lost in the communication, like the bank statements. Front and